I'm going to call this Lacey City Council meeting to order on October 11th, 2018. And if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a distributed agenda. Can I get a move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda items?
I move that we approve the agenda and consent agenda items.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And we have an agenda. And first up, one of our great presentations of the year, it's Chief for a Day. Dusty.
Nice stars.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. It's an exciting night for the Police Department because we are going to celebrate our 6th annual Chief for a Day. On June 15th, I had the pleasure of meeting 9-year-old Sam Fox, who turns 10 on the 25th of this month. Sam was selected as the Lacey Police Department's 2018 Chief for a Day. I would like to take a moment to introduce Sam and his family. Obviously, little Chief Sam, Dad, Sam, doing good so far, Mom Erin, Sister Ashlyn, Sister Bryn, Sister Anna, Sister Elsie. Grandfather Ron is in the audience. Could you? Grandparents Vince and Terry, and Aunt Emily. Thanks for being here. Chief for a Day is a law enforcement program celebrating the lives of children 3 to 12 who have been diagnosed with a life-threatening or chronic medical condition. The hope is to provide these children with a fun they will not forget and to become a part of their precious lives. It is the mission of Chief for a Day to help these children and their families forget about their illness, even if for a day. The Chief for a Day event is held biannually at the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. On the day of the event, the Little Chiefs attend a ceremony where they are honored as Chief for a Day. After the ceremony, the Little Chiefs and their families get to experience a day of fun, food, and demonstrations by law enforcement agencies. May have even seen a fire truck there, but we won't talk about that. Sam and over 30 other children were honored by their respective chiefs and sheriffs on August 16th at the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. Sam attends Woodland Elementary School and wants to be a police officer when he gets older. I have a lot of people to thank that brought this event together, and it seems to grow every time we get involved. Officer Sean Bell, who was actually pivotal in us getting involved in the original Chief for a Day in the event. So thank you, Sean. Sergeant Kevin Landwirl, Officer Dave Johansson, Officer Chris Wenshoff, I think is on a call, can't be here. Callie Nichols from Human Resources, done an incredible amount of work over there. John Koch, Criminal Justice Training Commission recruits Hunter Heim and Jordan Anderson. Jordan is here, but Hunter is not. He graduates tomorrow and we bring him back to start working. The Lacey Police Guild, the Lacey Police Management Association, City of Lacey employees, that all were involved, and many citizens and businesses within our community, and I'll try to run through them very quickly. It's pretty impressive. Gabby at Olympic Cards and Comics did a phenomenal amount of work. Lacey Walmart, Dr. Austin Smith Dentistry, Ashley Nicole Photography, Hands On Children's Museum, Tactical Tailor, Boom Shaka, Cabela's, Jim Bob's Chuck Wagon, you can take me there, Remote Control Hobbies, Forelli's, Cute Nails, Corey Bell, Lacey Costco, Lee's Tailoring, Trinity Massage, and Regal Cinemas. A huge thank you to all for making this successful event. Sam and his family will be part of the Lacey Police Department and the City of Lacey for a long time to come. It's been a pleasure to get to know them. After Sam is sworn in, we will have a short video to kind of show you what the event is all about. Are you ready for this, Sam? Okay. You have to stand up here in front of the mayor. Okay. Raise your right hand and repeat after me, okay? I, Sam Fox, promise to treat others with respect, study hard in school, listen to my parents, be a good role model for other children, be a good citizen, and represent the community as their little chief of police in and for the city of Lacey. Congratulations. I'm going to pin the badge. Great job. And I had a little help from Mom on what to put in the oath. So thank you. Now you have to sign. Right here. It's official. Thank you, Sam.
service today at 1653 KS Rate 1. Good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate all the work the police department and all the departments of the city of Lacey have put in for this. And that was very moving video for sure, to say the least. So thank you. So next up on our agenda is public comments on items not on the agenda. And we do have a few people who signed up. Rose?
We have something to share with everyone on the audience. My name is Rose Gunderson, and Linda Malincha-Finlan here has been a really dear colleague for several years, and today we really want to make it brief, but want to say thank you to Lacey City Council again for convening the subcommittee called Thurston County Coalition Against Trafficking. And because of making public comments here a few months ago, we got to meet Sean, who is in charge, who came here also from the Experience Olympia and Beyond, the Visitors Bureau. And because of hearing of what we do to offer training to schools and all that on human trafficking, she came up and said, can you do training with us for hotels? And after several months of connecting and doing work, and next week we have a training right here bringing the special nonprofit called BEST, Business Ending Slavery and Trafficking, to train all hotels. Not only that, last month we trained our volunteer advocates. We cover all the hotels in this county to invite them to come to the training. I hope that any one of you who happen to listen to us on TV or right here, you may have a connection to youth organizations, schools, or any businesses that really might be inadvertently have victims going through. We are willing to connect and offer training. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. You're doing some great work there. Really appreciate it. Next up is Mason. Can you please give your full name and keep your comments to about 3 minutes?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mason Rolfe. I just came here tonight because recently I've seen a lot of states and municipalities committing to some really ambitious goals in regard to reducing carbon emissions and addressing climate change. And I was looking at some of these and and thinking to myself, wow, I'm going to be 60 years old in 2054, and a lot of these goals are for 2035 and 2050. And as a young person, I'm moving into a stage of my life where I'm thinking about, you know, my career. I'm thinking about maybe buying a house or starting a family. And I'm up against some interesting decisions, like is the house I'm looking at going to be in a place prone to flooding or have clean water? Or if I decide to have children, are they going to grow up in a safe world? So it's some really interesting decisions that I'm finding myself come up against that I didn't really expect 5 or 10 years ago as a kid. So I've been really interested in seeing a reduction in consumption in places like here that would also impact a reduction in extraction in places like North Dakota or the tar sands or powder strip in Montana, which are places that see extreme rates of human trafficking as well. A few years ago, I was staying with my uncle in Colorado in a place that's recently saw quite a bit of natural gas development, and upstream of his home, 2 new wells were installed, and I could, for about 6 to 8 months, I could light the water coming out of his sink on fire because of the amount of methane that was in it. And they started bringing in water from town to drink and to bathe in, and it was just really sad to see. So for the past couple months, I've been working in the green energy economy, and I've been really happy and hopeful to see that the technology and the finance to make a clean energy transition are very present. And it's really the policy that have been holding things back. So I've been working with groups who try to expand state policy for things like solar energy and things like that. So something I'm really interested to see here. Thank you all very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mason, and your timing's well. We're going to be discussing the Regional Climate Action Plan Interlocal Agreement later in this agenda, so this council understands the urgency of this, and we're going to try to do something about it. So next up is Jasmine. Please give your full name and keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Lacey, for allowing me to comment publicly. My name is Jasmine, and Jasmine McLean. I am just here to represent some of the youth in Lacey, and I just would like to state, similar to what Mason stated earlier, that climate change does affect me and other members of my cohort in a much more disproportionate way than some of the members of the older generation, and I just really hope that the city of Lacey decides to lead on the issue of climate change, because that is a really important issue, in my opinion, and for the sake of all youth. So, thank you.
Thank you. Joel? Yeah. Please give your full name and keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Joel Carlson. I live in North Lacey. We are currently in the 6th great mass extinction of life on Earth due to fossil fuel global warming. In the Permian mass extinction 252 million years ago, carbon dioxide from volcanoes in what is now Russia caused 90% of life on Earth to disappear. It took millions of years for life to recover. Currently, carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has spiked from a long-term average of 250 parts per million to over 400 parts per million because of our burning of fossil fuels. As nothing is done to stop this, we could enter an irreversible feedback loop which once more would destroy most life on Earth. We already see the disastrous effects from this and must take action now to reduce our carbon emissions. By far the most effective way to reverse our carbon emissions in Thurston County is to establish a public utility district that will produce electricity from clean solar, wind, and existing hydro power to replace Puget Sound Energy, which gets about 60% of its electricity from dirty coal and other fossil fuels. Most communities surrounding us already get their electricity from clean renewable sources with much lower cost. For example, Centralia City Light Public Utility District electricity is 98.61% fossil fuel free while costing citizens far less. Likewise, Tacoma has similar results, Mason County, Lewis County, and it's time for us to take action and switch to clean renewable energy now. Earlier, you might remember I talked about reducing carbon emissions from buildings, but this we can get done in November 10th, 1 to 5 p.m. at the Universalist Church, 1 to 5 p.m. Is the Clean Energy Forum, and that's very important because there's going to be people, experts there that know how to get this done. And so you can ask me. I emailed some of you already. And if you have any questions, anything I can do to get this thing going, let me know, please. It's urgent. Thanks.
Thank you. Marcus? Please give your full name and keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Marcus Stansel. I'm here to let you know and invite you out to a ABA basketball. I'm a retired military. I retired in 2011 and stayed around because I worked as a GM for 2 local teams and seeing how they ran their programs. The goal of my program is to help the younger people that want to go to college or go overseas or make it to the NBA. The last 2 seasons we played out in the Nisqually Youth Center, and hopefully we'll be able to play there this year. I've been invited here, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to speak and let everybody know that we are out here. We start our season actually next week. Please come out. You come out to Yelm High School, and we take in, it's $5 for the game. We're trying to help them, and then we're working on trying to come and play a couple of games here in Lacey as well. We represent the Nisqually, Yelm, Lacey, and Olympia areas, and I brought one of my vets with me. He's probably my oldest player, but he's still probably the best player I have on my team. We have one young man our first year, got a 2-year scholarship playing with us. We have 2 that played overseas, and just recently we had a former NBA player, Rodney Stuckey, with us. So we're trying to bring NBA back. So this is one of the ways to do it, let them know that we can support basketball in the area. And we've been talking to a few of them, and hopefully it'll help us out around here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a website that people can go to see your schedule and on how to catch your games?
Yes, sir. www.quadcityflames.com. The schedule's up there. If you go to our Facebook page, you can see some of the videos from the past years as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And good luck on your season. Well, wishing you the best. It's our local team. So next up is Willie. Oh, please come up.
And my name is Willie Coles. I go by Will for short. Like the owner said, I'm the old guru of the team pretty much. I'm an Army veteran, retired 4 years ago, 45 years old now. Did 21 years in the service. Retired right here out of Fort Lewis, stay out in Yelm City. And like coach, well, not coach now, but the owner of the team said we're trying to mentor young people and get them in college and get them overseas and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to be here to help them out and push them further and everything. But not only that, just have them go somewhere where they can go and be seen and actually get a lot of recruiting down this way, because they do a lot of recruiting more up north in Seattle than they do down this way than anything else. And I played for a few other teams. I played for Olympia Rain back in the past when they was IBL.
Oh, yeah.
I played for Lakewood. I played for Everett. I played for Kitsap, Seattle. That's where I started out at. And now I'm playing for Quad City Flames. But like he said, just follow us on Facebook or Twitter and the ABA website, and you'll find us. And like our home games is that, but we're definitely trying to get some games out here. Like he was telling me what the city mayor was saying. So, I mean, I'm supporting them by 100% before I get up out here. I'm trying to get a couple more championships. So hopefully we can get people to come out and support us and stuff.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you. And I wish you guys the best for sure. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none. Our next agenda item is a proclamation, the Walk to School Month proclamation.
Okay. City of Lacey official proclamation. Whereas making bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements a priority can help protect the life and safety of Lacey's youth.
Whereas the City of Lacey is working to add bike lanes, trails, sidewalks, and improve street crossings to better connect our neighborhoods and provide safer routes to school. And
whereas a lack of physical activity plays a leading role in rising rates of obesity, diabetes, and other health problems among children. And
whereas regularly walking and biking to school can be fun and increase students' readiness to learn. And
whereas driving students to school in private vehicles contributes to traffic congestion and air pollution. And
Whereas an important role for parents and caregivers is to teach children how to safely walk and bike on our streets, and whereas in October, community leaders, parents, and children from around the world will join together for Walk to School events to increase awareness about the health and environmental benefits of walking and biking to schools.
Now, therefore, I, Andy Ryder, Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the Lacey City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Walk to School Month in the City of Lacey, and encourage all citizens of the City of Lacey to promote the safety and health of children this month and throughout the year by supporting pedestrian and bicycle improvements, modeling safe pedestrian and bicycle behaviors, and practicing an active lifestyle. Signed, myself, Mayor Andy Ryder, October 11th, 2018, and John from the district can come up and take it. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Want to say a few words?
Sure. My name is John Sussman. I'm the Director of Transportation for North Thurston Public Schools Council. Mr. Mayor, well said. Every one of those points you made in reference to this proclamation are absolutely outstanding. I would like to say thank you. I see Mr. Eggers from Public Works over there. The things that Lacey does to improve bike lanes, sidewalks, markings, Martin Hoppy and the things he does on the committees that he stands in for, bringing federal money into the town to help us improve our roadways, to make it safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, and for our students to get back and forth to school on a regular basis are outstanding. We're looking forward to the college and 22nd Avenue improvements that are about ready to come underway, and we cannot thank you enough for this wonderful proclamation.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So, point of order, may I say something? I had several updated pedestrian, well, they're really bike maps, but they work just well for pedestrians, and a few have been put back on the table back there if you want one of them. Thurston Regional Planning Council updates their bike mapping every year or two.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that. So next up on our agenda is the City Manager's Report.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, we have one item before you, and that's the Regional Climate Action Plan Interlocal Agreement. And I'm going to call up Jessica Brandt to provide that information.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This item is a recommendation to authorize the City Manager to execute an interlocal agreement between the Cities of Lacey, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, Thurston County, and Thurston Regional Planning Council for Phase 2 of Regional Climate Mitigation Planning. And as you know, Lacey's been working on climate mitigation for over 10 years now, and our original plans had emissions reductions targets set for the year 2020, which is almost here. And as we are updating our plans, we're now taking a regional approach and working with Olympia, Tumwater, and the county, along with TRPC, to develop a regional climate mitigation plan. And the council signed an interlocal agreement with those jurisdictions in April of 2018 to complete Phase 1 of a regional climate mitigation plan. And Phase 1 really focused on assessing existing policies and targets of each of the jurisdictions, looking for gaps and consistencies. It also identified each jurisdiction's implemented mitigation actions to date, and then recommended a regional emissions reduction target. We adopted those recommended common regional targets in July, and these targets were also adopted by all the other participating jurisdictions, and they were based on the most current and widely accepted climate science available. In addition, Phase 1 of that work produced a recommended scope of work for Phase 2, which is under consideration in this interlocal agreement. And Phase 2 will do a lot of work. I'll give you kind of the 6 highlights. It's going to include a really great regional public engagement strategy, and also it's going to evaluate and, if needed, update our emissions inventory. It's going to list community-wide actions to reduce public and private sector emissions. It's going to provide an implementation strategy for each participating jurisdiction. It'll provide a carbon wedge analysis or some other analytical tool like it that measures cumulative impacts of recommended actions. And lastly, develop metrics to gauge accountability and periodically track progress. And Phase 2 would be set to begin work in January of 2019. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge the great work of Thurston Regional Planning Council. Mike Burnham is here in the back. Thanks, Mike. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Can I get a motion?
I move that we authorize the city manager to execute the interlocal agreement between the City of Lacey, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, Thurston County, Thurston Regional Planning Council for Phase 2 of Regional Climate Mitigation Planning.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
I just have a quick question. Have any of the other jurisdictions done this yet? Have their councils passed it yet? Has it been to any of them yet?
We're the first ones, and then next week is Olympia and Tumwater, followed by the county.
So that happened on Tuesday?
Next week's, yeah.
You expect them all to pass it, I assume?
Yes.
Carolyn?
I think it's fitting that Lacey be the first one to take this up, since we were the first entity to adopt a carbon reduction plan in Thurston County. So
We were.
I am really excited that we're doing this.
Me too. This is really came out of talks with what Olympia was doing and Tumwater, and of course Lacey had already made a lot of progress with our CO2 reduction plan, and the other jurisdictions were actually trying to catch up to where we were at, and so we had discussed, we should really be doing this regionally, and it's great to see that Thurston County came on board. They came on board late, but they came on board to sign this interlocal agreement as well, because obviously they play a huge role in all of this. So I look forward to seeing this plan get executed, and hopefully we can make some progress on this important issue. Is there any, Deputy Mayor?
Well, given that news is getting more emphasizing that climate issues have getting to get worse and worse and worse, I think this is a really good thing to really start pushing now as soon as we can. That big news article was pretty scary, actually.
When we walked by the out in the lobby with the what I'm trying to get at is this is really historic, and it makes sense, and everybody coming together to make a difference is great.
Yeah. Any other discussion? It's been moved in second to authorize the city manager to execute this interlocal agreement. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Is there anything else, Mr. City Manager? So next up is our standing general committees. First up is Land Use Committee.
The Land Use Committee met on September the 25th, and we had two broad topics that we were discussing, one being branding of the Woodland District, and the other being a briefing on the Depot District sub-area plan. We had Julie Walton from the 3 Square Blocks organization presented the branding project. The key areas that they're focusing on are the Veterans Hub, South Puget Sound Community College, Thurston Economic Development Council, local businesses, Huntermer Park, and natural gathering places such as Dancing Goats Coffee and the Lacey Transit Center. This location was identified as being sort of the downtown of Lacey, if you will, due to its high energy and synergy, really, of these different organizations and the unique aspects. So we viewed draft Innovation District logos. That's the tentative name for this, nothing official yet, of course. Committee members gave some feedback on what they would like to see in terms of a logo that encompasses more of the parks and natural gathering places in the district. Moving on to the Depot District sub-area plan briefing. For those not familiar with it, the Depot District is roughly from the traffic circle at Pacific, near just west of College Street, all the way to Carpenter Road, and takes in the areas where St. Martin's are, Lacey Boulevard, Pacific, and running in their dual patterns there. And the city is working hard to establish a character and identity for that area. So it's some of the recommendations for this area are creating a university district between Franz Street and Ruddle Road, slowing down traffic on Lacey Boulevard so we can make it a little more pedestrian friendly and friendlier to the businesses because people often zoom right past them and don't engage. East End senior housing with the apartment complex that's going up at Carpenter and Pacific, as well as renovated pedestrian crossings for safety. And then looking at spatial implementation strategies for this project. We also got a quick briefing on the pedestrian bicycle plan, and it's scheduled, well, it was adopted, which we recently adopted. So it's online for people to see if they'd like to see that.
Great.
My report.
Thank you. Next up is the Finance Committee, which met back on September 25th. I was the chair. We just went over all the pre-budget revenue and expenditure estimates. Since then, this council's had a work session to go over the exact same information, so I won't go over it again with you. But we are looking forward to hearing from our city manager about the upcoming budget. So next up is boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'll go first. The Transportation Policy Board met yesterday morning, bright and early at 7 a.m. We had three major items that we discussed. First was a presentation from the State Office of Financial Management, who's in the process of trying to deal with an executive order 16-07 from Governor Inslee, which set forth a workplace strategy initiative that addresses recruitment, retention, flexibility, mobility, and intends to reduce transportation and energy usage by state employees and work sites. And so actually one of the bigger impacts of this new executive order is future buildings and how they're built, so we can the state that has 22,000 state employees in Thurston County. So obviously they are the largest employer in Thurston County. How future buildings will be built to sort of accommodate the future workforces and to be able to attract the workforce the state needs, as they're seeing, like all state agencies right now, a major retirement that's happening. And so they need to recruit, of course, this next generation, and their expectations for workplace and how they work and be able to telework and all that is a lot different. And so the first building the state is going to implement this new strategy at is our new transportation building that's coming to Northeast Lacey. And so the first RFP went out to include the language of this executive order. And so it'll be the first building the state will be built, you know, where you're not going to see cubicles and big offices that separates people. There'll be all more collaborative workspace. They have no idea what's going to look like because the RFP just went out, and it's up to the architect to figure it out. But it was really interesting to hear about obviously the largest employer in Thurston County and what they're trying to do to keep up with the times and be effective in attracting this next generation of employees. We then had a update from the Thurston Economic Alliance. That's coming out of Sustainable Thurston as well. So we had a report from Aslan Mead from the EDC and Sean Stewart from the VCB, and they're talking about a coordinated approach to economic development strategies, initiatives, and efforts. And so they really went around trying to brand Thurston County to attract economic development. Like, what is our strategy? What are we known for in this region? And really be able to push that as an identity to attract, again, workforce to this area. And so that was a really interesting presentation. we had an RTIP amendment for City of Tumwater. They recently received some federal money, and like always, sometimes this money comes and you don't have a lot of notice, so you need to get into the RTIP in order to be able to spend it. So we passed that. And then, as the deputy mayor was talking about, the new Thurston County bicycle map is out, and it's the 6th edition of the bicycle map, and they have a online edition that's coming as well. It hasn't been quite released yet, but they're still working on it. And so that is my report. Next up, so we also had a mayor's forum last Friday, and a lot of the time was talking about all the what's going on in Bucoda. This is Bucoda month. You know, this is what they're really have done a good job of branding themselves, and they're attracting a lot of attention, not only from the Pacific Northwest, but they've been on television, on shows from across the United States. And so I think they've done a great job of branding themselves, and they have a haunted house and activities every weekend between now and Halloween. And so if you get a chance, go out to Bucoda during this, Fridays and Saturdays and check out their haunted house. They're doing a great job.
Not?
Bucoda.
Yeah, Bucoda, not Bucoda.
Yeah. And so that's my report. Next up is Deputy Mayor.
So LOT met yesterday, October 10th in the evening, and our work session always comes first. We were given a brief update by our LOT representative from Olympia on their housing strategy for an assisted camping area, and we briefly discussed the possibility to include in the budget to pay for a shower toilet facility for that camp, and from LOT. So, and it was felt that it fell into our mission because it keeps the camp away from the Butt Inlet treatment plant, which would make sure the issue of non-treated waste would be reduced, as well as it's better for LOT's employees, which need to spend 2 hours in the morning trying to clear up needles and other dangerous issues. So then we discussed our strategic plan performance measures. We also heard about, then we had a quick update on several issues, and so we heard about impacts of upcoming construction projects, such as we will have to limit the access to Franklin Street next to the Butt Inlet treatment plant when the secondary clarification project is started. We talked about adding another security personnel person and shifting duties around a little bit around that to help cover that, making sure that we have the full day covered. We also heard that about the director talking about a possible demonstration project that might occur on LOT property for sea level rise adaptation, and we'll know more about that later. And then lastly, on our work session, because LOT is getting pulled into the issue of Capitol Lake and the dam, because ecology has control over our MPDES permit, it was decided by the board to see if myself, as the LOT president, could be part of the executive committee that's working on that so that we can look after our interests. And then our business meeting, we had a hearing on the proposed 2019-2020 budget and capital improvement plan. There were no commenters. Afterwards, it was brought up by Mayor Komet, who's representing Tumwater, to add a line item, budget item for a certain amount to cover the shower toilet facility to go into that camping complex. And that was approved, or well, it actually wasn't approved, I'm sorry, because we haven't approved that whole budget thing yet, but they said they would bring it back with that line item. And what I ended up saying is that if we do that, and if Tumwater and Lacey or Thurston County has a similar kind of needs, that lot, to be fair to ratepayers, that lot would cover a facility for them too, so that it wouldn't be just Olympia. Then we approved we made the final approval for the 2019 and 2020 rates. We approved the master planning phase 1 contract with Brown and Caldwell for $213,334. And this is a planning effort to evaluate and update facility needs to the Butt Inlet Treatment Plant, building on numerous analyses already completed, new and improved data regarding future capacity projections and pending regulatory requirements. And that's for lot. Olympia Region, yes?
One quick question. How does the bathroom shower facility fit into Lot's mission?
Well, because we're having a whole lot of impacts to the treatment because of water quality issues, waste that isn't being treated. It affects the staff trying to keep the plant safe. So it is kind of directed. Now this, at one time they asked us to fund having outhouses all over the city. And I says, you know, that just isn't our mission. But this is a real specific thing of a monitored camp that pulls it away, totally away from the lot facility. And I think it makes more sense that way to me. I mean, we talked about it and had a good discussion about it, but, and it's just one little, well, it's not necessarily little, but it's, it covers the shower and the toilet facility part of that. So
thank you.
That's how we looked at it. But my bigger issue was that, not bigger issue, but I want to be fair to our ratepayers that are in other cities as well. So not just have it fund Olympia's needs. And I think that's been agreed by all the board. Okay, Olympia Region Clean Air Agency also met yesterday in the morning, and we did a few things. We reviewed the draft penalty worksheets for the general and air operating permit sources, and these haven't been updated since 2007, so the updates made the questions more clear and fixed information that was more permanent to current conditions. And then after we reviewed that, both of them were approved. Two interviews for 2 compliance staff have been completed and narrowed down to 2, and they're now just waiting for references. And we had an update by Mark Gooden from who's our engineering staff for commercial permits, and he told us that a new technology was being proposed by Peninsula Topsoils called air curtain incinerators. And he stated that all the air agencies in Washington actually said they would not permit this new technology because it doesn't succeed in reducing problematic emissions. So it didn't even come before ORCA. They just called and says, if that's what you're going to be using in your application, we can't accept it. And then on our September air quality in Thurston County and at ORCA's other monitors showed a good average reading for PM 2.5 microns over the month, which is great, compared to the last month or two, and where all the fires were. Ozone also was, which is measured in parts per billion, is within acceptable limits. And then Dr. Hadley stated that the Community Toxics Grant Project is moving forward, and they've already collected samples and have received the first set of data analysis back from the company ERG. And we didn't hear what that analysis is. She's still pulling it together, and there's several samples that need to be collated. And lastly, she attended a conference of air quality scientists where discussion of problems with over-the-counter called purple air data was discussed. And a lot of people are just going online and buying these air data monitoring equipment. And the companies selling these monitors still have not calibrated the equipment so that it would be accurate. And that's a real concern because it's reading too high. So depending on which piece of equipment it is, it needs to be reduced by a factor of 2 or 3. And she has that kind of formula, but it depends on which equipment, so it gets a little hard to just give it to people. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Young.
Hi. So I was unable to attend the CIP or the HHSC on Monday, so Councilmember Cox will be reporting on that for me. But I can report on the EDC meeting. So the EDC board member, Cheryl Selby, the mayor of Olympia, had to step down from the board because she became an employee, a part-time employee of the EDC. She's actually helping in rural development as a business coach. And then, so the new board of directors, the new board member that's representing the city of Lacey is the city's economic development director, Mike Reed. And at the meeting, Mike Reed did a presentation on the economy as it relates to B&O tax incentives, which we discussed at our last council meeting. And the finance committee at the city of Olympia had supported increasing the threshold for micro businesses from 20,000 to 75,000. So I thought that was interesting, wanted to bring it back to our council. And then Ms. Josephine Young from St. Martin's just retired as the Director of International Programs, and 15 years ago she helped create the relationship between the EDC and China. So she will be still volunteering her time with the EDC and create a real center for international trade and development there at the SPSCC campus. So that's exciting, and she was honored at our board meeting. There was a presentation on the economic impact of the Evergreen State College, which was very interesting, and it showed that for every 100 jobs at Evergreen, a total of 215 additional jobs are added to Thurston County. Their total economic contribution is valued at over $200 million. So I thought it'd be interesting, Evergreen is in Olympia, but I thought it'd be interesting to see this type of information as it relates to Lacey with St. Martin's and SPSCC. And then the Thurston Economic Alliance reported on a National Products Expo that was held in Baltimore, Maryland. And basically companies that were highlighted at that expo in Maryland from here in Thurston County were Callison's, Ice Chips, Alafia, Mud Bay, Earth Friendly Products, and a few others. And the EDC staff is following up with leads and case management. And it was recommended that this effort continue within the category of natural product manufacturing. Then the EDC held their annual real estate forum on September 27th. They will be holding their annual Regional Innovation Expo on December 6th at the Little Creek Casino. And that's my report.
Thank you much. Councilmember Greenstein.
All right. Excuse me. Thurston Communications 911 met on October 3rd. Primary agenda item for the meeting was the presentation of the 2019 budget. The budget committee, which I chaired, recommended approval of the budget, and it was approved at this meeting. A couple of the highlights of that budget. The big one is that we actually have a budget that will, at the end of the year, have $5 million in reserves. So pretty good turnaround from where we were just a couple of years ago. There'll be no new staff positions added this year, and they're anticipating using 3.5% growth in revenue, so being pretty conservative on the revenue side, and that'll still leave us with, like I said, a $5 million reserve at the end of the year. And then the only other thing of interest was the Chehalis tribe will switch over from using their current communications, which is Grays Harbor County, thank you, to using TCOM on 11.1. So it's really a good thing for us because it actually brings in some additional revenue without increasing our cost at all. We don't need to add any employees for the number of calls that they average, but they will be paying for all of it. So it's a pretty good win for us, actually. And then earlier today, the Comprehensive Planning Subcommittee of Emergency Medical Services met. We completed the establishment of the goals and objectives for what the plan should look like. That'll be presented to the board next week for their approval. We also formed committees to work on each of the 4 main goals and the objectives that match up to those goals. I am actually going to be on the committee for goal number 4, which is to come up with a plan and ensure that emergency services in Thurston County will be adequately and sustainably funded into the future. And that is my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hearn.
So the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee concluded this year for spending for next year. And highlights are as follows. There were 22 entities, the recipients of the $592,000 that was distributed. The committee maintained reserves and also protected the some capital budgets that are scheduled for that money. What's good about the lodging tax is that it's a committee of community members and hoteliers that discern and spend dollars that are already collected. And so it's, but this will be part of the 19 proposed budget amendment because of course it goes through the city of Lacey. And we'll plan on presenting more uplifting details about this in future meetings.
So, sorry, I know that the amount requested came in that was a lot higher than what we originally had budgeted for. Did you, were you able to give money to everyone that requested it, or?
Sure, so good question. Everybody that applied this year received funds. Not everybody received the budget they asked for.
Okay.
Our committee was diligent on working hard to discern between economic development and community. Great. And sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they're not necessarily. Mm-hmm. And they really pressed every application and applicant to make sure that that the funds would be used most efficiently. And there were a few dollars in the applications that just didn't meet the committee's standards for that. Mm-hmm. So the committee in their wisdom decided to invest that into a future year and reserve that. So I was really proud of the work.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your leadership on that. Next up is Councilmember Stedman.
Well, I actually have a couple more.
Sorry.
But thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay. So TCAT, Thurston County Against Trafficking, met tonight before our meeting, and as Rose Gunderson spoke of, the Inhospitable to Human Trafficking Training Workshop for hoteliers is Thursday, October 18th from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in Olympia. Just a phenomenal response from the hoteliers, and this is a real strong partnership between Washington Trafficking Prevention, Thurston County Against Trafficking, Experience Olympia and Beyond, who stepped right in, and BEST, Businesses Ending Slavery and Trafficking. So that's an event that we're looking forward to putting on. Talk was had about the will be the 4th annual 5K against trafficking next April. Last year we had 30 volunteers that worked the race to raise $26,000, which is very good. We're obviously looking for 30 plus this year to raise more. It is on the same day as Procession of Species, but it's usually, it was done early in the morning, 10:30 or so, and so had plenty of time to hit both events on that day. So early planning for that, for more success on that next year. Olympia and Beyond has their annual retreat next Tuesday from 1 to 5. So I'll be reporting on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stedman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Lacey South Sound Chamber met last week on October 3rd from 11 to 1 at St. Martin's Pavilion. And the topic on the agenda was the Chamber's Candidate Forum for 2018. And on the forum was, switch over here, was incumbent Bud Blake. It was candidates for Thurston County Commission, incumbent Bud Blake and challenger Ty Mesner. And they answered a lot of questions, informed the business community, the chamber, and everybody. And we also had an informative discussion with the mayor himself, Andy Ryder, as a pro for Prop 1. And I don't remember the other gentleman's name at the forum, but he discussed the against it. And it was very informative, like I was saying, because the chamber and the business community is very instrumental in getting things, passed or not passed. So other than that, that is my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Cox.
Righty. On Monday, October 8th, I attended the CIP. This is Community Investment Project slash HHSC. It's the Health and Human Services Council. Essentially, this group manages funds that the cities and the county contribute together to cover really, emergency needs, such as utility and rent assistance to help people right on the edge of being homeless, be able to keep their apartment for another month. Personal hygiene, access to things like childcare and transportation. So we heard a report from Shelley Slaughter, who's director of the County Health Department, and Commissioner Bud Blake on plans to develop kind of a new decision-making process through the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council on how to award larger housing dollars that come into the county from local, state, and federal resources. This is, multi-million-dollar money. Lacey has been a participant in a memorandum of understanding among the cities that make up this community investment project, and we heard a report from Elizabeth Petrich from the prosecutor's office about the status of that memorandum, and she doesn't really think we need to make any changes to it other than the South County cities who had been there under the aegis of Thurston County will now, if they want to continue, will have to chip in their half of 1% of sales tax receipts if they want to continue with that group. So that is the CIP. Earlier this evening, the Urban Cities Committee, Ad Hoc Committee on Homelessness and Affordable Housing. It's a terrible name. We've got to figure out a better name for this group. Met, and our guest was Stacy Ray, who's a senior planner with the City of Olympia. And she gave us a project overview of a homeless response plan process that the city is implementing. This is in addition to some of the immediate steps that they're taking to try to address homelessness emergencies. But this will actually be a very collaborative process with the community. They're looking to invite a broad cross-section of the regional community to identify, co-create, and lead an effective response to homelessness. So I don't want it just to be the city staff and the City Council of Olympia. They want to really have public engagement and work through this together on ways to address that. So it's a pretty exciting process for them, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Thurston Regional Planning. Well, let me talk about intercity transit first. They met on October 3rd. It's been a busy week. A few things of interest from that are we declared some van pool vehicles that have reached the end of their useful life as van pool vehicles as surplus, with a total value estimated at $222,000 plus. The reason this is important is that starting right now, Intercity Transit will take applications from community organizations that can make use of these vehicles, and we will actually give them to them. Lacey Veterans Hub was the recipient of one of these vehicles, and so worthwhile programs who need help getting people to places can apply for these things. We authorized the general manager to execute an amendment to the existing agreement that we have with the Department of Enterprise Services to add about $1.5 million more to the contract for expanding the Olympia Transit Center. It was kind of a painful step to take, but construction costs just are going crazy. Contractors are having troubles getting employees, and it's just, the going rate is just going up exponentially. And then a piece of good news, the city managed to get a lease on a building right across the street from the transit center. I think it's on Washington Street, and that will house the youth education training program that Intercity Transit has, that will include the bicycle rehab and teaching kids how to be safe commuting to school. And let's see, I've got one more. That is the Thurston Regional Planning Council, which met last Friday on the 5th. We heard a report on the Chehalis Basin Flood Authority and the workings that they have been doing. Just briefly, since 2013, they've spent the first few years looking at options about damming the Chehalis River to try to help with flood control. From 2015 to 2017, the State Department of Transportation reevaluated protection alternatives for Interstate 5. Many of you who've been in the area for a while might remember when I-5 was completely underwater for about 5 days back in 2007. And then from starting last year and going through 2019, they're doing environmental impact statements on some of these alternatives to try to get to the place where they can complete the work. Some of the work they've been doing is like restoring salmon and other aquatic species, which means like removing barriers for salmon to get to the sea and come back when their spawning time happens, habitat protection, and that sort of thing. We had a brief report on the Thurston Community Economic Alliance. That group deals with 5 major thrusts. One is workforce readiness. Another is target industry growth, entrepreneurial resources, coordinating on infrastructure, and then branding, partnerships, and communication, all with the idea of having a vibrant economy in Thurston County. And lastly, with this group, we heard some discussion on priorities for the upcoming legislative session. Transportation's a biggie. We're going again for $5 million for I-5. Last year we got $550,000 of that, so we're hoping to get a little bit more out of the legislature this year. We're also hoping to get money to address intercity transit's maintenance and operation facility, which is, I mean, it was built for about 80 vehicles, and we've got something like 400 vehicles when you count the dial-a-lift smaller buses and all the vans and just other trucks and other vehicles. It's really crazy. And then it's official. The Regional Planning Council is now the home of the Deschutes Watershed Salmon Recovery Grant, and they're hiring now for an entity, lead entity coordinator position. And then finally, the Ruckelshaus Center is doing extensive outreach about the Growth Management Act and research, and they're hosting meetings. The one for elected officials is coming up on October 24th from 5:30 to 8 at the Thurston Regional Planning Council building. So I'm hoping we can have some representation to that one. And that's my very long report that I tried to keep as short as possible.
No problem.
One last thing I almost forgot, and how can we forget our dear Chief Dusty Pierpoint? At the chamber, they recognized him again, gave him another standing ovation. But Chief, I know you probably don't, heard it 1,000 times, but on the behalf of the business community, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you. The business community loves their chief and the selfless dedication you've served this community for so long. Can't tell you how much you appreciate it. So.
Yeah. Short timers. Countdown. Well, thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of our agenda. I hope everyone has a safe weekend. And without objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned. You keep it classy, Lacey.